Can you feel it? The pulse of the earth beneath your feet? The whisper of a lost soul in the breeze through the trees? Sometimes the wild does not shout, it mourns, it remembers. And in that stillness, in that quiet cry echoing through the mountains of Congo, there lives a story. Not of fame or fortune, but of connection. Of a tiny heartbeat left alone in the wilderness, and the human heart that chose to answer it. Today we don't just recount a life, we resurrect it. This is the tale of Dicassi, a mountain gorilla whose short life etched itself onto the hearts of millions, and of Andre Balma, the man who answered the wild's cry with love, sacrifice, and devotion. A soul meeting a soul across species, borders, and tragedy. A story that reminds us, sometimes the most extraordinary families are born not from blood, but from brokenness. And in that brokenness, something divine finds room to grow. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. It began with blood, not birth. In the lush, haunted jungles of Congo's Virunga National Park, April 2011 delivered a miracle and a massacre. A fragile mountain gorilla entered the world, her name later whispered as Dicassi. But before she could cling to her mother for more than a moment, the dark hands of poaching tore her world apart. Just 2 months old, she became an orphan, alone. Her cries were not the coos of curiosity, but the desperate wails of grief that only the trees dared echo back. The jungle is a place of beauty, but also of silence. It does not always answer, but this time it did. Because one man, a ranger, a guardian, a warrior of compassion, heard what others ignored. Andre Balma didn't find Dicassi by chance. He was led by something deeper, perhaps the same force that draws stars to the night. When he saw her trembling under a canopy of green, her tiny hands clenched like prayers, his breath caught. In that moment, the world fell away. There was no wild animal, no risk calculation. Just a soul screaming for safety, and another answering, "He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge." Andre knelt slowly, no sudden movements. No command over nature, just a gentle surrender. He observed the way her small frame shook, her dark eyes scanning his face for something familiar, something kind. And when he finally reached out, her fear did not flee, it softened. He wrapped her in his arms like a secret the world had forgotten. Her heartbeat thudded against his chest, fast, frantic, alive. That was the beginning. But beginnings in the wild are fragile. He knew that saving her meant more than food or water. It meant showing up every day, every hour. And so began the trek through thick foliage and emotional weight to the Senkwekwa Center, a sanctuary unlike any other. Yet what they built there, it was no mere rehabilitation. It was a home born from ashes. Andre became more than her rescuer. He became her family, a father to the fatherless, a defender of widows, is God in his holy dwelling. At the Senkwekwa Center, time didn't pass, it blossomed. Day by day, Andre and Dicassi stitched a bond stronger than language. She would curl into his lap like a child returning to safety. Her head nestled into the rhythm of his breathing, her fingers tracing the seams of his shirt as if memorizing him. Andre didn't teach her love, she reminded him of it. In her eyes, he found the rawest kind of trust. And in her play, her mischief, he saw healing. She would steal his ranger's hat, wearing it like a crown, her grin daring him to chase her, and chase her he would, not just around the sanctuary, but through every ache of his soul. Every broken part in him was soothed by her laughter. He watched her grow, not just in size, but in spirit, from a traumatized infant to a vibrant, defiant young gorilla. Dicassi was no longer just a survivor, she was a symbol. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails. Photos of their bond caught fire on the internet. Millions stared, awed by the image of a wild gorilla standing upright, her arms gently embracing the man who gave her everything. Her eyes peered into the camera, but her soul was locked on Andre, and him? He never once saw her as a burden. He saw in her every reason he had ever laced his boots and walked into danger. She wasn't part of the mission. She was the mission. The image wasn't viral because it was cute. It was viral because it was truth. Raw, undeniable proof that human and animal aren't separate. They're siblings in a wounded world. Their days were filled with laughter and quiet, with caretaking and communion, with teaching and touch. When Andre sat silently at dusk, weary from a long day, Dicassi would wander over and place her hand on his cheek. No words, just presence. She didn't need to ask if he was okay. She simply was the answer. Even to your old age and gray hairs, I am he who will sustain you. I have made you and I will carry you. But even the most sacred stories must bow to time. And time is a thief. As Dicassi entered her 14th year, once the age of promise, her body began to falter. Her playful leaps became slower. Her breath, once rhythmic and calm, now came in shallow puffs. Andre noticed before anyone. He had memorized her, every twitch, every blink, every sound. And now those rhythms began to change, not drastically, not violently, but like a candle slowly losing its flame. He sat with her more often, held her longer, whispered stories into her ear about the trees, the sky, and the day he found her. She would close her eyes and lean into his voice, as if she remembered everything, as if the forest had never taken her family, because he had become her forest, her protector, her peace, the righteous care for the needs of their animals, but the kindest acts of the wicked are cruel. And when the final day came, it didn't scream, it whispered. Dicassi didn't die alone. She passed in the arms of the man who loved her as fiercely as if she were his own blood. Andre wept, not because the bond was broken, but because it had been so beautiful. His grief was loud, echoing through the mountains like a storm. But even in death, Dicassi gave something, a reminder, that love, when given fully, never ends, it transforms. It lives on in stories, in images, and the softened hearts of those who witness it. Andre continued his work, but his eyes held a depth. Only those who've loved and lost can carry. There are moments in life when time doesn't just slow down, it weeps. When every breath feels borrowed and every heartbeat echoes with memories too heavy to carry. This is one of those moments. The walls of a small room inside the Senkwekwe Center stood still, bathed in pale yellow, a color meant to soothe, now witnessing a heartbreak that would ripple far beyond its corners. On the first day of September 2025, as the sun melted, behind the Virunga mountains and the wind whispered through the cracks like a final lullaby, a soul prepared to journey home. Andre Balma sat quietly, holding the most fragile treasure the wild had ever given him. Dicassi, his daughter not by blood but by love, she was dying. And though her breath had become shallow, her spirit still glowed. The bond they'd forged, a love born from trauma and nursed through years of laughter, healing, and tenderness, had now reached its sacred conclusion. But even in death, Dicassi, the orphaned mountain gorilla who taught the world how to love again, had one final miracle left to give. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with. Me? Andre never left her side, not for a second. The illness had crept in like a thief, silent, determined, cruel. Despite every treatment, every prayer, and every sleepless night, her condition worsened. But this was never about just prolonging life. It was about honoring it. Andre created a sanctuary inside her room. The walls, warm in hue, reflected the golden tone of her youth, a place where she once danced in sunlight, where she once stole his hat with a laugh only he could interpret. Now, those same walls held quiet sobs, trembling hands, and an overwhelming ache that words could never express. As Dicassi's breaths became thinner, slower, Andre held her closer, cradling her head against his chest like he did when she was a baby. His heartbeat tried to sing the lullaby of safety, but the forest was calling her back. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. And then it happened. A moment so piercing in its purity that the world, had it been watching, would have fallen to its knees. Dicassi, weakened and frail, raised her hand with deliberate purpose. Her finger trembled as it extended toward a map on the wall, a hand-drawn image of the Virunga terrain. Her eyes lingered on a single dot. The place where her mother, whose face she never remembered, was buried. That was her final request. Not with words, but with instinct, with the memory of something far more ancient than language. She wanted to go home, to rest in the arms of the mother who birthed her into a world of loss, but who now, in death, awaited her in peace. That gesture, it shattered Andre. Tears poured from him like rain from heaven. He wasn't just holding a gorilla. He was holding a soul, full of longing, of memory, of sacred reunion. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. She passed without fear. With the wind in her ears, with love at her side, and her mother's spirit in her mind. Andre whispered, "You're going home, my girl," as she took her final breath. A stillness enveloped the room, but it was not silence, it was reverence. The kind only found at the thin places between earth and eternity. That day, the forest wept. Rangers across the center fell into mourning. But they didn't mourn just a gorilla. They mourned a daughter, a sister, a symbol of everything worth protecting. The Senkwekwa Center dimmed its lights. The jungle fell quiet, and around the world, hearts cracked open. Because the love between Andre and Dicassi had never been just about survival, it was about transcendence. She wasn't born into love. She found it. And in return, she showed the world how powerful, how utterly healing, love without condition could be. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Andre sat for hours long after her last breath, stroking her fur, remembering the way she used to steal fruit from his basket, the way she'd tap his cheek when she wanted his attention, the way her laughter sounded, yes, gorillas laugh, and how it filled the jungle with light. Her absence was unbearable, but so was the thought of her never having been loved. And that's where the miracle lies. She was loved. So fiercely, so completely, so irrevocably. And now, her story lives beyond her body. Dicassi isn't just a name whispered in the winds of Congo. She's a banner of resilience, of interspecies love, of what happens when one human chooses not to look away. Let everything that has breath praise the Lord. This isn't just a wildlife tale. This is a human story. A divine story. One that demands more than admiration. It demands action. Because while Dicassi found her sanctuary, thousands of other mountain gorillas still face bullets instead of blankets. Still flee from chainsaws instead of finding comfort, poaching, habitat loss, climate change. These aren't abstract headlines. They're knives carving away at our shared future. Every small choice you make, the organizations you support, the stories you share, the awareness you raise, becomes a thread in the tapestry of hope. Dicassi's legacy isn't just a memory. It's a movement. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Ensure justice for those being crushed. Andre Balma's journey didn't end that day. He still walks the forest, every footstep echoing with her memory. And when he looks up into the mist, he sometimes feels a presence, playful, warm. Watching, he smiles, not because the pain is gone, but because love left him with something eternal. A reason to keep going. A reminder that even the briefest life can ignite the longest legacy. So the question is no longer, who was Dicassi? And so, Dicassi is gone, but only in body. Her spirit still lingers in the breath of the Virunga forest, in the rustle of leaves, in the hush before dawn, in the quiet space where grief and love hold hands. Andre Balma still walks those trails, not alone, but with the weight of her memory pressed gently against his soul. Her laughter echoes in his dreams. Her touch remains etched into his palms. She was never just a gorilla, she was family. A miracle. A child of the wild who taught the world how deeply, how fiercely, how fully animals can love and be loved in return. We often think of love as something reserved for humans. But Dicassi shattered that illusion. In her gaze we saw reflection. In her bond with Andre we saw redemption. In her final breath we saw reverence. She showed us that true love crosses all barriers, language, species, even death. And now, as the last light of her life folds into the tapestry of the earth, her legacy becomes a living call to protect, To feel, to fight for those who cannot. Speak. Her story is not just one to remember, it's one to carry forward, because somewhere out there, another orphan waits for a hand to reach out, for a heart to open. And if Dicassi's life taught us anything, it's this: sometimes saving another being is the very thing that saves us. Let love be your legacy too.